Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Mark Ronich, and I'm president of statewide news service, jbiztechvalley.com, and a columnist for the Jewish Press. With us today is our special guest, I'm so happy to have her here, is Susan Zimet. She's originally from New Paltz, but lives in Greene County now, and she came up here. She's the executive director of the Hunger Action Network of New York State. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling me up and asking me to come on. I was really honored.
Well, this was something that I've always wanted to do because I'm such a fan of your career.
Oh, thank you. Really?
You know?
Seriously?
Really? Seriously.
Tell me.
Because you really had, I have friends in New Paltz, and a friend of mine got married at one of the synagogues in New Paltz, and, they have...
The one synagogue in New Paltz.
And the JCC, you have a,
right.
There's combined with the JCC.
Right.
So, there's a Jewish community there. People talk about you. Oh, do you know Susan? All this. So, and
some people say some good stuff, and some people say some bad stuff.
And you were supervisor
Yes.
of the town of
Yes.
New Paltz. Did you get along with the mayor of the village? Because
Well,
the village
actually,
and the town is...
Well, actually, there were many a mayor through
While
my career. Well, I was supervisor from 1996 to 2000. And the interesting thing about that was I had never served on the town board, I never served on the planning board, I never served on the ZBA, never served on any committees. I was not involved in town government at all. And they wanted to build a very, very big mall with a Walmart as an anchor.
Yes.
And if you know New Paltz at all, it's a very lovely, eclectic downtown.
Right.
And, the history of Walmarts and major malls and stuff, it would have really destroyed the community. Plus, at the time, Walmart this is many years ago, we're talking 25 years ago, was using child labor overseas. And I'm really passionate about children and children's issues.
Right.
And so I got involved in the fight against the Walmart, and then what happened was people saw my ability to take very complicated issues and boil it down, and all of a sudden everybody said, you've got to run for supervisor. And I was like, huh? And they're going, you have to run for supervisor. And I was like, what's a supervisor? I had no clue. I said no 8 times, which interestingly enough is a common factor with women, that women, when they're asked to run for office, their first instinct is, no, I can't do that. And you have to ask a woman about 7 to 8 times before she'll agree to do it, which got me very upset when I learned that statistic, because I always think I'm outside of the box, and here I fit into a statistic.
Right, yeah.
But, and so I finally said, okay. And then I got called to go to a press conference, and I show up at town hall, and the first person I ask, I say, excuse me, is this town hall?
Yeah.
And then I go into this press conference to announce I'm running for supervisor. And then what ended up happening is I ran against a 3 or 4 term incumbent whose family helped settle the town. And a lot of people didn't know me because my husband's name and my children's names are not my name. I never changed my name. And so people were really funny, were calling up and saying to the people in the Democratic Committee, if you can't get Susan Zimet, there's this woman, Susan Auerbach, you should get. Well, that was me. And so, long and short, I finally said, okay, because I just really didn't want to see my town get devastated. And I ran for supervisor, and at the beginning, the former supervisor was like, he had no fear whatsoever.
Right.
He said, we never saw you, we don't even know who you are, but I'm an incredibly hard worker. And so I worked really hard.
And personable.
Well, thank you.
That's what it takes.
Well, you know what it was? It was like I really worked really hard. I went out and talked to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I talked about issues. I didn't talk about everything else in politics that people talk about, which is personal attacks and this. It was always issue. And it ended up becoming the most watched election in the Hudson Valley, and then I ended up winning. And so that was my beginning of politics. And so the very first town board meeting I ran, I had to sort of sit there and lean over to the guy next to me and go, what do I do now? That was 1996.
What's Robert's Rules of Order?
Right, well, now I know that very well. And I'll tell you a very funny story. When my children were in synagogue age, when they were going to Jewish school, I sort of decided that was the time I should basically maybe volunteer and be on the board. At that time, give my time. There weren't that many people for the synagogue to pull from. So I volunteered. So I met there was this one guy who was on the board for ever, and he really controlled the board. So one board meeting, we're talking, and I say something, and I go, you can't do that. That's you can't, blah, blah, blah. It's out of order. And he turns and he looks at me and he goes, since when are you an expert on Robert's Rules of Order? And I looked and said, since I've become supervisor. He was very upset because I was the only other person on the board who understood Robert's rules. He used to be able to just throw it out all the time.
And who would even stand up to him.
Right. Oh, right, probably, you're right.
You know,
well, I'm not
and
scared of standing up
well,
to
I'll
people.
keep that in mind during this interview.
Yes.
But, you know, it's just very interesting how, you know, I know you're a liberal Democrat.
I'm a liberal Democrat, although I'm very fiscally
conservative?
because I really do believe that it's other people's money,
Right.
and that we as government have no right to spend other people's money except for on things that need money to be spent on.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I think from the national level down to a local level, there's more money than anybody ever wants to admit, and it's just poorly spent.
Right.
But I really believe that government should be there for people when they need them, otherwise stay out of people's lives. You know, there's a purpose for government.
Well, I hate to do this to you.
Sure, it's
Don't
okay.
take offense.
Don't worry.
But I'm comparing you to Donald Trump.
In what way?
Because in what way? He's never been in government, never ran for office.
That's true.
Total outsider. He's going out there talking to the people in the people's language. I mean, he learned from you.
Well, I should call them up and say, okay,
You
Donald.
know?
Well, the funny thing is, what people would always say to me is that they would always say, you're saying what we're thinking. But
Yeah.
nobody else in government would have the guts
And
to
that's
say.
what's going on
Right.
with the Trump campaign.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So
It's,
there you are,
yeah,
female
right.
Donald Trump.
Except I have a little bit more respect for women, for minorities. I can go on and on.
It's, you know, but you know that salty
Yeah.
language and
No, I
you know,
agree.
so-
And the truth is, I always said when, you know, I also ran for state senate against Senator Bonasek, who I'm actually very close with right now, and I get a lot of things done up in Albany working with him. But when I was on the campaign trail for state senate and I was talking with people in different districts that I had never been in that didn't know me,
Yeah.
I would say to them, you know, I believe if you're in elected office that you truly need to say what you believe, and even if it means you're going to lose an election, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Because you're not in there to have a career. You're in there to
Right.
do what you believe is the right thing. So one time I was up in Delaware County with the Democratic County Committee being interviewed, and some woman brought up the whole reservoir, you know,
Right.
you know, because what happened in Delaware County is they went in, they got rid of a whole bunch of towns,
watershed,
flooded it, you know,
right.
made it the reservoir in New York City's water. And they just hate
I know.
New York City. Not only do they
I
hate New York
used to
City,
I used to go to WDLA
Okay.
in Walton,
yeah,
and the station owner would he would rail against.
well, you know
what
what's
they
really
did.
funny is that people who move up from Manhattan and have only been living there for 5-6 years, all of a sudden they hate Manhattan too. You know, it's like we hate New York. And so I'm very much of a believer that I always disliked the state senate upstate, downstate divide, where it was always, you know, fighting about downstate or upstate. We're one state and we need each other. And so we went there and some woman brought up, you know, the reservoir. And I looked at her and I said, look, I said, I have to tell you, I said, we need New York City. New York City needs us. I said, I believe that you fight for your rights and you defend yourself to the best of your ability, but I also believe you have to compromise and work together for a solution so you have a win-win solution. And I said that to her, and then somebody else basically said, I agree with Susan, whatever, whatever. The next day I get a phone call, and somebody from Delaware County said to me, Susan, we can't believe that you did that. We can't believe you did that. And I said, well, look, I said, I'm going to say what I believe. And if at the end of the day, none of you agree with me, then I'm not the right person to represent you. Because I'm not going to pretend to hate
Sure.
New York City.
No.
You know, it's the greatest city in the world. I'm not going to pretend.
It's not a matter of pretending to hate it. I mean, you know, the folks in Delaware County, when they protested, they brought their tractors down to New York City at City Hall. I don't know if you
No, I didn't
remember
know that.
Yeah.
No.
They literally, all the farmers, they went trucking down there with their tractors. I don't know how they got gas along the way, but, you know.
Must have been a lot cheaper then.
It was a lot cheaper, but, you know, it takes a long time for those tractors.
Yeah. No, I do.
But
Look, they have a right to be upset. I don't
Well,
think they don't have a. They have a very legitimate right to be upset.
My point of what I'm upset about with that watershed is the fact that in Orange County, I was told the story that all of a sudden, you know, people saw this pond of water, and they didn't know where it was coming from. They ignored it for so many years. And they finally realized that it's coming from the pipes going to, and it was leaking.
Oh, horrible! No.
And you were losing all that water that was coming from the watershed.
Well, not only were we losing millions of dollars of water, okay, and forget about
Millions of gallons.
millions of gallons and millions of dollars, millions of gallons
Yeah.
and whatever. And I'm not just talking money, because water is, I believe, the liquid gold of the future. Okay,
It's the source
and
of
I
life,
always
yeah.
knew that. But regardless, it's not just that in Ulster County, in the Warsing area,
Yeah.
there were houses that literally have been flooded. Their basements were flooded for 20, 25 years. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Finally, New York City did, because they have to fix the pipes that are coming down to the city.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, New York City DEP finally agreed to buy out a bunch of the people's homes that they
Yeah.
wanted to sell, to finally help them get out from underneath what was a horrible
And,
situation.
and just to make it clear for people, I mean, these are not small pipes like you
Yeah.
have in your house. These are pipes that you could walk through.
Right, exactly. Oh, I drive a truck through probably.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so if you cut the water off, and you can repair those pipes by going through them with, you know, a flashlight even, you know, just to see where the breaks are.
But see, the funny thing is, again, it goes back to that concept of being able to work together.
Yeah.
Because everybody upstate looks at the DEP as the enemy.
Department of Environmental Protection.
Department of
right,
Environmental Protection.
of New York City.
Yet in New Paltz, the village is on the water, which is actually funny, because the question was, how did I get along with the mayors? The village is on the city water.
Right.
The town is not, except for some town residents who buy water from the village.
Right.
And so the village had been dealing with the DEP for like 10 years to try to figure out how we're going to deal with when they shut the water off for the couple, you know, how we're going to get water in New Paltz. And I ended up writing a letter to the DEP. I had met the DEP commissioner from my anti-fracking work that I had done. And I had done a lot of anti-fracking work, and I had meetings with the DEP commissioner. And I wrote a letter saying, I know you're looking for water. The town, I believe, has a lot of water. Maybe we can work together. 2 days later, they called me. They were in my office 3 days later. The following Monday, it was like, Susan, we want to work with you. And then I started working with the DEP, even though it was really the village's problem, and helped to basically facilitate and get the project done. And even the county executive in Ulster County once said to me, he goes, Susan, he goes, I have never seen anybody get the DEP into their office as quick as you did. And I said, they're the ones who call, you know, who got, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of, you know, again, sure, we have to take our sides and protect, but if you truly work together, you can usually take care of problems and try to make the world a little bit better for the people we're serving. But unfortunately, what happens with too many elected officials is it becomes a career.
So, like John Bonasek.
Yes, but
who replaced what? Richard Skirmahorn, right?
No, he replaced Charlie Cook.
Charlie Cook.
He replaced
Okay,
Charlie Cook back.
okay.
It was my
Well,
first year I was
did-
supervisor in 1996.
Did
when
Locke-
with Senator Bonasek and Assemblyman Bonasek and Assemblyman Guerin
Yes.
both ran against each other, and Bonasek won,
Right.
and that was 1996.
And then
Now-
Guerin defeated Kevin Cahill for one or two
For one
terms.
term, for
No,
one term.
yeah.
One or two, actually,
94.
I think it might have been, no, it was one term, I think,
Yeah.
and then Kevin came back. And then, you know, Kevin came back. Senator Bonasek, interestingly enough, sure, he's been there for a really long time, but he still is relatively independent. I mean, he does challenge the Republican caucus on a number of issues. And, you know, he is pretty middle of the road, which is why, you know, the Democrats don't dislike him. And all I can say is I ran against him. Elliot Spitzer took over my campaign. It was quite a race. And I did not win, but I didn't expect to win.
Why would Elliot Spitzer take over?
It was interesting. It was somebody I was working with knew Elliot very well. And towards the end, when Elliot was like just so far ahead and everybody knew that he was going to win, it was like, you know, they sort of decided to take over a race. And I was it. They took over my race. But
Wow.
unfortunately, it was 6 weeks
Yeah.
before the end of before the election.
So what'd you
And,
lose by?
You know, it was a couple percentage points.
That's
you know, but
it.
this is what happened.
That was close.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that bad. Actually, at one point, the night of the election, a reporter came over to me. You know, we were at the place waiting, whatever, and a
Yeah.
reporter came over and said, "So how does it feel to know that you won?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, you won." I said, "You're kidding me." And she goes, "No," but then later on, some other, you know, whatever came in. It was very interesting. The Republicans were very, very smart. What they did was they knew that they couldn't beat Congressman Hinchey. He was our congressman. They knew they weren't going to beat Assemblyman Cahill or Assemblywoman Gunther. And so what they did was basically they ran no opposition at all against Congressman Hinchey, Bonasek, Gunther. The only race was me and Bonasek. And so what they did was, because in Ulster County, people knew me very well, but in Sullivan, Orange, Delaware, they didn't know me. And so what they did was suppress the vote. And then, you know, I had raised the money I was supposed to raise. I raised a lot of money. The polls showed that I could win. And so at the end of the summer, Senator Bruno Majority Leader Bruno says to Bonasek, this should have been an easy race. You know, you could lose a seat. So they spent $1 million against me the last 6 weeks of the campaign. They ran horrific advertising that was not even true. And as a matter of fact, They ran something that was an absolute lie, and my husband, who buys national television time, and you can't lie about, toilet paper, we got a copy of the radio show I was on, we sent it to the lawyers, they were about to pull the commercial when their lawyers said, freedom of speech, you can't pull it. And it was really, really horrible. So people up in the other counties didn't know me, so they just saw this horrible advertising. So of course I ended up losing, but interestingly enough, in Ulster County, where people knew me and knew Senator Bonasek, I ended up winning in Ulster County. It was the first time Senator Bonasek lost anything. So I won in Ulster County, and a lot of people towards the end were getting very upset because they knew me and really liked me. The Republicans in Ulster County liked me very much. People liked Senator Bonasek, and they got upset seeing what he was doing against me. It wasn't really him. It was probably, the Republican up here in Albany. But, they didn't like what he was doing against me. So towards the end, when I would call people for money, there were Republicans who would say to me, Susan, we don't normally give money, but we're giving you money. Go buy some more radio. We don't like what's being done to you. But after the election, Senator Bonasek said to me, Susan, he goes, I don't think I can say it on TV, but he basically made a comment about how brave he thought I was and what a great job I had done. And from that moment on, we've been really good friends, and together we worked on getting the fracking moratorium done in Ulster County, in New York State. We worked on getting the millionaire's tax, extended, a number of years ago. He's helping me right now on hunger in terms of, trying to get more money for hunger. He's helping me right now on this wage theft bill. So, knock wood, I have a friend in the Republican Senate.
He doesn't want you to run against him ever again.
Yeah,
he's
right,
a
exactly.
Smart,
he's a smart man.
cookie,
No, he was very smart. He was very smart because he made a friend out of me. And because I'm a very loyal person, I wouldn't run against him. I wouldn't run against him. I wouldn't do that. Why would I run against somebody who helps me, even if it's for their own? I just wouldn't do it. And when I'm able to get things done, we have a Republican Senate, we have a Democratic Assembly. It's a perfect world for me to do what I'm doing, and that's how you get. And that's how you get things done.
Well, that's true. That is how you get things done. But
so I did get along with the mayors. There was a number of different mayors, but I did get along. But unfortunately, with the town and village dynamics.
You had Jason West.
No, first I had Tom Nyquist.
Right, but you had Jason West.
I had Tom Nyquist, then I had Jason West.
And that must have been a handful.
It was
with the
interesting.
Same-sex marriage.
It was interesting, but actually, Jason and I, interestingly enough, Jason and I overlapped. So I was no longer supervisor when Jason came in as mayor. So I was not supervisor when the same-sex marriages happened. However, I did publish a book called Big Story in a Small Town, written by the reporter who covered the whole entire thing, and published the book, and it's all my photography. Years later, when I got brought back, Jason actually won again. So when I was 96 to 2000, from 2012 to 2015, when I was supervisor the second time, Jason and I overlapped for a little while, and then Jason lost the next election.
So is he still in New Paltz? What's he doing?
I think he's going for a master's or something. He's not really around that. I don't really see him that much, but I'm not in New Paltz anymore either, because now I live in Greene County.
That's right.
Close to Albany, where I work as executive director for Hunger Action Network.
That's right, which is what we want to talk about. Okay, now I do want to ask you, do you know the vice chair of the Ulster Republican Committee who lives in New Paltz?
I know the chair. Who's the vice chair?
The guy who used to be the band...
Butch Denner?
Butch Denner, who's also Jewish.
Butch is also Jewish, but Butch, of course I know Butch.
I would imagine.
Of course I know Butch. Let me just put it to you this way. If I was a Republican, Butch would have said I was the greatest supervisor that ever existed.
Yeah.
Because I was a Democrat,
Right.
Butch's whole entire goal was to destroy me to the best of his ability.
Well,
that was his role, that was his job.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I would have gotten along with him. He chose not to want to get along with me.
Well, and I do see him up in Kingston for Minyan, and
he goes to
the
a synagogue in Kingston.
Yeah, the Hex. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
okay, so now we're done with that little tidbit. Hunger Action Network. It was
Yes.
started in 1982, and they had a gentleman who was there for 29 years.
He was there for a very long
Mark
time. Mark
Dunley.
Dunley. He was there for a long time, although he was executive director, then he wasn't, then he was executive director, then he wasn't, but he was there for a long time, and he actually helped to start the organization
right.
and establish it to what it is today.
He could be whatever he wanted
Right,
to be.
exactly.
Yes. And
Well, I think in some ways for him, without putting words into his mouth, an executive director has a lot of administrative and fundraising and those
Yes.
kind of things, and Mark is very much of a policy person.
Yes.
And so I think there were times when he just didn't want to do the administrative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, he hoped to establish it and, make it the organization that it is.
Mm-hmm. So does he still give you advice?
No, I mean, we don't really see each other, talk to each other that much.
So it's all yours?
So it's
all
my
yours.
baby.
It's your
so
baby.
what happened was last year when I first got offered the job, the job sort of came to me. I didn't go search the job. Yeah, well, actually what happened was 2 board members I knew independently, one from New Paltz and one, Ron Deutsch, who's now the executive director of New Yorkers, well, he was
fiscal
New Yorkers
policy, fairness for fiscal
He was
policy.
New Yorkers for Fiscal Fairness.
Right.
Now he's the Fiscal Policy Institute.
Right.
Ron and I worked together for years on property tax reform.
Mm-hmm.
So we were always working together on property tax reform. So Ron knew me. I never knew Ron was on the Hunger Action Network board.
Right.
This guy, Brian Riddell, who I know through New Paltz, and his wife Michelle and I have worked together on depleted uranium. We've worked together on closing Indian Point. We've worked together on anti-fracking. So one day I had called Michelle to talk to her about depleted uranium and something we were going to be doing with the veterans. And she somehow mentioned Ron Deutsch, and I said, "What's Ron doing there?" And she said, "Well, we're having a Hunger Action Network, board meeting." And she goes, "Oh my God, we need you, Susan. We need you on hunger. We need you on hunger. We need you on hunger." I was like, "Okay, Michelle." So over the years, she kept talking to me about it and everything. And then eventually, when Mark really said, "I'm really stepping down," Ron and Brian both got in touch with me and said, "Apply for the job." And for me, I always cared about hunger, and I always cared about that issue. So it wasn't far from something I was interested in.
Right.
And I was really looking for a way to sort of move out of local politics. I had had enough after 20 years, and it's really changed a lot, and it's gotten really nasty, especially in New Paltz. It's really nasty. And so I sort of wanted to morph out, so it was a perfect opportunity for me, and so I ended up ultimately being offered the job. So last year I was actually the supervisor and doing Hunger Action, but as of January 1st, I've been here full-time, and it's quite an interesting experience.
It is. Now
And not from the job itself, from the hunger field. It's amazing.
I know. I'm glad I ate before I came on the show because I knew I was going to get hungry talking about all this.
And I haven't eaten all day, so and I was hungry before I came on, and now I'm fine. But really think about it. Think about, like you said, that you ate beforehand. Imagine what it's like to get up in the morning and have no food to be put on the table, and you have to go to school.
That's happened to me.
And then you have to go through school, without being able to eat, come home. And this one story that really got me was a teacher talking how she asked the kids in her class to draw a picture of what they had for dinner last night. And one of the children handed in a blank piece of paper.
Well, that was easy enough.
And the teacher said, "Didn't you understand what I asked?" And he said, "Yes." She goes, "But you gave me a blank piece of paper." And he said, "It wasn't my turn for dinner."
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you experienced that growing up? Or?
Oh, I was a latchkey kid. So my mother worked, and when she came home, she went to sleep, and I was there to fend for myself. And when she got up when my father would have late hours, and they had their thing to do, and then I ate if I ate, if I didn't, I didn't, and
But was there food in the house?
Yeah, there was food, whether I wanted that type of food or if I wanted the food, that was something else.
Yeah.
But I learned how to broil steak and hamburgers very quickly, also. So, but I still, I understand that there are people out there who really, it's not their time, it's not their day of the week to eat. And,
or the mother is not eating because there's not enough food, so she's trying to feed her children. And it's really, I was astounded. I mean, before I got into this field, I just didn't have a clue of how poverty is like wreaking havoc in this country. 51% of our children, we just beat the 50% mark, and this is not a good thing.
No, it's not.
51% of our children in America now live in poverty.
Well, that's
51% of our children live in poverty.
So food stamps are not doing the job?
No, I mean, yes and no. There is this, it's now called SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition.
EBT.
Well, that's the card.
That's the card.
That's the card.
Yeah, electronic benefit
Right,
transfer.
exactly. But it's called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's what food stamps is the new name for food stamps. And yes, that certainly helps, but the benefits people get from SNAP or the food stamps that they get don't last for the month, and more often than not, it's not ever enough to feed the family that basically is on them. And then, of course, you're constantly having, I'm sorry, I don't want to get political, but the truth of the matter is, the Republican House, the Republican Congress constantly trying to, dismantle it.
Yes, but we have all these food pantries, and we have all these food banks.
Unfortunately, we have all these food pantries and all these food banks, which are getting more and more people coming to them. Okay, so they're not getting more money. As a matter of fact,
But they're getting more donations.
No, not necessarily, because everybody's hurting. Everybody is hurting. People are hurting more than ever before. I mean, I can say even my own personal life is not what it used to be.
I will tell you that if the health department would ease its regulations on the amount of food that's thrown out and what could be done with it.
Well, I agree with you there.
Because there is a tremendous amount of food that's wasted in restaurants.
That's right.
After catering events,
That's
catered
right.
events.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, there are people who wait outside by the dumpster and have an off-the-side agreement with the restaurant owner, store owner, whatever, that they will come they will come out and not put the bag in the garbage or put it on the floor, and whatever happens after that, they don't know, they don't want to know, hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. So people come along, they take the bag, and that's what they eat. But you have these regulations, these government regulations that are there to sort of protect us, but sometimes they go overboard also.
Well, food recovery is a very, very big thing because we waste so much food, like you said. And so, I mean, it's not like there isn't enough food to feed people. We have more than enough food to feed people. It's a political will to deal with the issues to make sure people are getting fed. And unfortunately, what's happening now at the pantries is they're starting to get more and more veterans.
Yeah.
They're starting to get more seniors like never before. They're getting working poor who can't make ends meet anymore.
Right.
So between the working poor, the seniors, the veterans, those are the growing segment.
So let me ask you
Sure.
quickly about the minimum wage, because you're all in favor of this $15 minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand that there's a lot of nuances to the minimum wage, and that there are issues. I mean, I have a lot of friends in New Paltz who have businesses who would flip out when we would talk about the $15 minimum wage, and they say, Susan, I can't handle my business if it goes up to 15. But really, what we try to do at Hunger Action Network is our goal is to lift people out of poverty. It's not just to get more money for the food banks, okay? So people can go to pantries and get free, get food. Our goal at Hunger Action Network is to work on the issues that lift people out of poverty so they don't have to go to a food bank. So things like minimum wage, things like paid family leave, wage theft, issues like that, single payer health care, those type of things are issues that we work on while we also try to get more money for the pantries, because ultimately we want the pantries out of business.
Why? What are they going to do with all that food? That'll all go to waste.
Well, hopefully no. They won't have all this food that gets donated because people are eating and people are getting fed, and people don't have to stand on line.
That's an idealistic goal to begin with. Okay.
It's idealistic, but I don't think it's that idealistic. I really don't.
There's still the working poor, and
Sure.
that's what. So, but if you do the analysis, by the time this $15 minimum wage goes into effect, it's worth $13 in today's dollars.
I agree with you
okay?
there.
And plus, it's supposed to be a minimum wage, not a livable wage.
Right.
So if it was a livable wage, it would have to be what, $30 an hour?
Yeah, it's like
What would it have to be? Because with $15, it's what, $30,000 a year?
$15
an hour?
Yeah.
About $30,000 a year?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end-all and be-all. It's not the panacea that's going to be like, okay, now everything's great in the world kind of stuff, but at least it's something. At least it's something. But I agree with you. The fact that it's going to be phased in, so by the time it gets phased in,
Right.
it's going to be like, right, we're going to have to start this fight all over again. And then simultaneously, the upstate-downstate divide, I don't think that's necessarily fair too. I mean, I do understand that New York City is a little bit more expensive to live in, but the people who are going to live on $15 are not living in New York City.
But it's not like you're going to ever give up this fight.
No.
I mean, you said we got to start this fight over again. You're going to continue
Oh, yeah,
this.
we still are. We are still.
You're not
That's right.
giving
Yeah, no,
up
we're
and
still-
saying
no,
we're going to take
no.
a 2-year break or something.
No.
I know you.
No, I agree with you there.
So-
It's just that, once we got the minimum wage passed, then we started working on trying to make sure we got wage theft passed, because people aren't even getting paid the minimum wage.
Right.
And then there are people who are working and they're having their entire wages stolen. And so, wage theft is a very big issue. And so there's all these different issues. Or like seniors now, what's happening with seniors is they're either paying for their medicine,
Right.
or they have to pay for food. But at the
Right.
end of the day,
They have
if
to
a
make a
senior
choice.
doesn't eat,
Right.
it's not going to help with the medicine.
Right, right,
Because
right,
food
right.
is medicine.
So I just want to let you know, Rabbi Simon, who co-hosts with me, is on assignment. He's
Right.
out of town. And his son, Zalmi, runs the Shalom Food Pantry.
Oh, does he?
So it's
I would
for
love to come down, yeah.
kosher food. So that's here in Bethlehem. And I just wanted to let you know that,
thank you.
know, he has this food pantry, he has volunteers delivering these packages of food to Jewish households
Yeah.
so people can eat kosher food. And that's food that's donated, and ShopRite helps with that, and there's other places that
terrific.
help. So I just want you to know that
Thank
there
you.
is a need in the Jewish community
we know that.
for kosher food,
Yeah.
and not just any food.
That's right.
But, you know,
Mazon is a national foundation, and Mazon,
hospitality.
no, it's Mazon, it's, it's Mazon Foundation, and they basically, what they basically do is.
Oh,
a
Mazon,
Jewish-
M-A-Z-O-N.
Right, yeah, a Jewish
Okay,
response
I'm
to
sorry.
hunger.
Okay. Oh,
And so
okay.
they actually give us funding to do the advocacy work that we do, and.
Well, maybe you can hook up with Zalmi Simon, and maybe they could be some
Sure.
some work that the two of you can.
Absolutely, because actually Mazon funds focus pantries right here in
Yeah,
Albany,
really?
which is right around the corner on State Street, and they fund them. And so Mazon basically is fighting hunger in the United States and fighting hunger in Israel. And so, that's sort of their thing. And no, there's a very big need within the
Well-
Jewish community in terms of hunger. It's not, see, that's the thing about hunger. It doesn't discriminate.
Right,
It doesn't
right,
discriminate
right.
religiously,
Right.
ethnicity,
Right.
male, female.
Socioeconomic, it
Right,
doesn't, yeah.
right.
So continue the good work.
Thank
We're
you.
running out of time.
Yes, I know,
and
we spent
it's-
a little too
this
much
is-
time on New Paltz.
But you know what? It was fascinating.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that we can have those general conversations.
Yes.
So continued success, keep up
Yes.
the good work.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on
Thank
the
you for
program.
inviting me, thank you.